Here's a question. How can you keep from getting sick with a respiratory illness this season? The good news is, everyday actions can help you stay well and stop the spread. Wash your hands, take steps for cleaner air, and try to avoid close contact with people who are sick. And talk to your doctor about what vaccines may be right for you, so you can help keep yourself and your loved ones healthy. Learn more at cdc.gov/respiratory-illnesses. A message from CDC.
This choir podcast is brought to you by the book, The God I Was Given, by me, Scott Lloyd. I wrote it for those who are seeking to embrace faith without the constraints of religion. For those who've discovered a God who doesn't keep a guest list, but throws block parties where everyone belongs. This book is for the weary, the wounded, and the hopeful. Anyone searching for a faith big enough to hold their questions and bold enough to ignite their wonder. The God I Was Given, available now on Amazon.
The majority of our life is lived in liminal space.
And there's this in-between space, this liminal space.
This liminality that reveals possibility.
I think we're in a liminal moment, but also in a place of transformation. We could actually change as a people.
I have great affection for the church and a troubled relationship with it.
That can't be the gospel, because God said to love our neighbors.
Just to be alive in time means that we're on the threshold of the future.
Just to begin questioning is so difficult, because you have these voices in your ears telling you that you're not a real Christian.
We don't know what the future looks like. We have to work it out together.
Oh, well, hey, everybody. This is Tom from Liminal Living Podcast, and I got a cool little thing to share. I talked with Matt Tebbe, and we had such a rich, long, wonderful conversation that I decided to break it up into two parts. So what you're about to listen to or watch, if you're on YouTube, is part 1 of 2, and we are going to have a second part next week. So make sure to tune in. This is not the entirety of our conversation, and it's a doozy. It's a good one. You're going to love it. I guarantee it. All right, Matt Tebbe, welcome back to the Liminal Living Podcast. I believe this is your third appearance.
I trust your count. Yeah, I trust your count.
You trust... That was, I think this is number 3. I technically have recast your first episode that you did with me, because that was one of my favorites. And I recast that one when I needed some time off. So, and I think we did a second conversation, and then now this is number 3. So I guess technically you've have 4 episodes, even though one is a rerun. So
that's great. It's good to be back again.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Now, first time we chatted, I caught you right on the other side of a mountain climbing thing that you did, and we talked a little bit about that. And now here, you just got back like yesterday from mountain climbing again in the Tetons, and I seem to just get you after these mountain climbing trips. I'm not sure how that works, but was this one less painful than the last one?
Yeah, last one was some scary parts, some rain, and it was almost like 60% longer than this last one. So 3 years ago was more arduous, a little more scary. This time was still difficult. I mean, part of the appeal for me is being out in nature, being with friends, being away from technology, completely off the grid. And then the other part that's generative or appealing to me is that, sometimes you don't know what you have until you need to have it. And kind of putting myself into a physically difficult situation where there's no couch or a bag of potato chips or television, there's just this, you have a bag, you have a pack on your back, and you have to walk these 12 miles through a hailstorm to get to your campsite. There's just no option. And there's something about being in a group of guys where you have an objective together and you come to maybe some of the end of your capacities that is, I don't know. I don't know if enjoyable is the right word. I find it vital.
Vital is a good word.
I find it vital.
because you come to the end of what you got, and then you have a community there that's going to keep pulling you forward and carry you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's inspirational watching. I mean, I tend to, two of the guys who go on this trip are just like, they can find sunshine in hell. I mean, they can find like the best, they can find the bright side of midnight. So they're so positive and so hopeful. And then another guy is just great at solving problems. And I'm there just to tell, dad jokes and to remind everybody of our potential demise and mortality. So I really enjoy being around people who aren't sunshine pumpers. I mean, it's not like pie in the sky, but their positivity is infectious. Mm-hmm. And their resiliency is something that feeds me, like just being around them, being in the same, cadre of people doing this thing together. I don't know. I need that in my life, and it's, 1 week every 2 years I get to really soak in it.
Nice. I think toxic positivity is very different than offering people just hope or pointing out the bright spots of reality.
Oh yeah.
There's a big difference there.
Yeah, it really isn't toxic positivity, because I think toxic positivity is meant to sort of, it has the function of denying reality, and then it also has the function of not telling the truth about harm.
Yeah.
Right?
That is 100% accurate.
And there's a rugged positivity that tells the truth about harm, but doesn't let that truth overshadow hope, or doesn't let pain swallow joy. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, God's given me some friends that embody that really well, and I need it. Yeah. So
I just got to see in real time how your brain worked. Like you just close your eyes and you're like, let me dissect this thing called positivity. Let me draw the lines here. Here's the differences between. That's what I really like about just following you on social media. Like, I get into doom scrolling these days a little bit more than I should, and I'm trying not to. It's really hard not to, but there are things that I will stop at and watch or read every word, and there's two people that I will stop and read every word, you were one of those two people. The other one I'm actually talking to on Wednesday, Anthony Smith from Birmingham.
Yeah.
And whenever there's just something in your posts where you're able to do what you just did, like, let me define the terms here. Let me just show you how this works. I'll pop open the hood. I know there's this grand idea that's captured your imagination, but let me show you exactly what's in here. And I love that about your posts.
Yeah, thanks, man. I honestly, like, even now, even in this conversation, it's not like I come to the conversation having these well-baked, crafted thoughts, and I can't wait to share them. But I just get these impressions that there's something to mine out here, and I keep talking until I mine it out. You know what I mean? Like, some people have to, like, stop talking to think, and I find that I think best while I'm trying to explain something. Yeah. And so for whatever it's worth, or for better or for worse, or whatever the phrase is, I think I have to name things that feel important to me as a way of expressing agency and organizing my inner and exterior life. Like, things that seem important but seem nebulous or really hard to pin down create, I don't know if anxieties. I'm just preoccupied with them. I can't focus until I'm able to be like, what's the difference between toxic positivity and my friends on this trail? Because it wasn't a toxic I didn't feel gaslit, you know? And what is that difference? And until I name it, I'm unsettled. You know what I'm saying? Yes. And so, I guess it's just part of my own self-regulation.
It's like your superhero strength as well. Like, if you were in, the Marvel movies, that would be like, you'd have like X-ray vision. You just like pop down some cool glasses and you'd be like, I see everything in this philosophy now. Let me tell you about it.
Thanks. That's really kind, Tom. Thank you.
Well, as I said, like your past episodes, we've talked a little bit about your experience growing up Christian, your evolution as a Christian, and just some of your recent writings. You've been substacking and podcasting and posting for a while. And before we dive into that, like, I just want to check in. I'm a pastor. You're a pastor. Like, how you doing as a pastor in this crazy climate of rising Christian nationalism, authoritarianism? Like, how you holding up? How's the heart doing?
Yeah. I was just talking to, who was I talking to about this yesterday? Oh, a friend of mine is in town from Manhattan, and he's visiting for this ministry conference. And I was trying to name a couple things. Just between you and me, Tom,
and the podcast audience,
I feel I'm feeling powerless and questioning if my work is meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, the external kind of increasing avalanche of just flooding the zone, flooding the news with just elected officials taking $50,000 bribes from FBI and then the Department of Justice deciding not to investigate it. Or Jimmy Kimmel getting suspended because he used his free speech to criticize how MAGA was responding to Charlie Kirk's death. Or, all these things feel so big and far away and not something that I actually have any agency in, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they also feel threatening. Like they seem like they're like harbingers of doom. That's
Good
kind of
Lord.
closing in,
You named it right there. Yes.
It feels like a harbinger of doom, and there's not just like one a week or one a day, there's dozens a day. Well, dozens a week and multiple times a day. I'm like, oh, this kind of thing 10 years ago would have ruined a politician's career. And now there's multiple things like that a week, and we don't even blink.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's kind of this low-grade panic I'm feeling, like always kind of on high alert in my body, externally. Internally, like my people are really fatigued and scared. And, there's kind of this general anxiety, like the tariffs and AI. People are just sort of like worried, is my job, can I afford to live? I used to be able to take my family out to dinner for this amount, and now it costs 75% more, and is my job going to be replaced? Am I going to become obsolete? Are billionaires going to save lots of money by replacing me with an algorithm? And so then the internal like thing for me as a pastor is like the people in my church need like triage. They're like really hurting. And that's very time intensive, right? So they need like one-on-one time and someone to be with them and pray with them. But I also feel like that too. And so I do wonder, like, do I have what they need? Do I have to give what they need? Because I need care too, and I know there's various ways of talking about pastoral authority. There are certain ways I can receive care from my congregation, I think, but then there's certain ways it's unhelpful or unwise for me to seek care from the people who are in my care, right? To use an analogy, like there's certain ways my 17-year-old cares for me as his dad, and then there's certain ways that would be not helpful for him if I asked him to care for me in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't account for and reckon with the responsibility I have in his life and the power differential. And I feel like
that.
There's an analogy. It's not a one-to-one correlation, right? I'm not saying, I'm not trying to be paternalistic to my congregation. I'm just saying, like there's a power differential and a responsibility distinction in a father-son relationship, so too there is similar dynamics with a pastor to congregation. So all that to say, Tom, I struggle feeling like I have what my congregation needs, and I also struggle feeling like this is meaningful. You know, I was a history major in college, and remember having these deep convictions, reading about like the German church during the Third Reich and the Nazis, and so much of the German church was full-on white supremacist, not the fascists, right? But a lot of the church was like, hey, we're just going to continue to, celebrate the sacraments and pray and kind of stay out of this. And I don't want to be either of those things. I don't want to be a Christian nationalist or a neo-fascist. But I also don't want to just retreat into my church and celebrate Eucharist while the world burns.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what to do.
Yeah. I'm with you 100% on that. And I don't want to be the pastor that allows all of the news pundits to then dictate what I'm doing in liturgical worship services on a Sunday every week. Because that seems kind of cheap. Like then I just become like a figurehead, like a talking head in the newsroom. And I watch the news and then I just come and report on it like a Jack Van Impe, but for a different purpose.
Right.
But I also don't want to pretend that everything's okay and ignore what's going on in the world. And being able to pastorally care for people in my congregation who are on both sides of the aisle is really difficult when I passionately feel danger, like you said, like this harbinger of doom every single day. I don't know how to, because the lines are just drawn so harshly of you are either for or against, and there is no middle grounds, and we have both people in attendance. And every Sunday I'm preaching against empire from some kind of angle, but then to come out and partisanly aim that at political figures and political topics and all the stuff in the news, I don't know how to do that without becoming a partisan mouthpiece for, just one end of the political spectrum. That's hard for me to understand how to do that. I don't think I do that well.
Yeah. I think I used to struggle with that more than I do now, Tom. Because I actually think being a Democrat is morally superior to being a fascist.
I can definitely say that. Yeah.
I think there's an asymmetry, and I'm not I don't consider myself a Democrat. But if I have to support a Democrat so that our country doesn't violate human civil rights that they wouldn't otherwise, then I will.
Yeah.
And I think Christians, we fail to think about this in a robust way, because there's what I often hear is purity language gets invoked when we talk about using our vote for somebody who, for instance, supports abortion. I could never support a candidate that supports abortion. And you ask why, and it's because it's murder. And we could we could bracket out that conversation about abortion, but let's just take that moral logic as sound. And I want to invite those people who use that reasoning to say, well, be consistent then. Go all the way with it.
Yes.
Go all the way with it. If you spend money at an organization or corporation that is whose policies harm or kill people, stop doing it. If your taxes go to bombs that kill children, P.S. they do, stop paying taxes. Or live below the poverty line so your taxes no longer support bombs that kill children. So there's a purity sort of or integrity invoked, and I can't participate in that harm in the political arena, Tom, that isn't even considered in all the other arenas where our agency, our capital, our will, our support are tacitly or explicitly given to evil and wrongdoing. So we use two different rubrics, moral filters, and I think it's a selective moral filter. There may be some people in the world who have integrity and do it across the board, but if you're like me, you don't. Mm-hmm. we just are inconsistent creatures who and the way that our world is so complicated and we're so entwined. I mean, like, I got my money in a bank and I barely know what they're doing with it.
Yeah.
Right? So our world is so complicated that to make a moral stand about a vote that feels very principled, but then to not do that across the board feels arbitrary, and I think driven by moral, not a very morally robust, consistent ethic.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess all that to say is, like, for instance, I don't want my money to be spent on bombs killing kids in Gaza. I don't want that. But I pay taxes, and so my money is spent on bombs killing kids in Gaza. And when I voted in 2024, there wasn't a viable presidential candidate who had a chance to win who wasn't going to bomb kids in Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so my choice was the real choice I had wasn't. I don't even remember the third party candidates who promised to stop funding Israel, or promised to do all they could to create a ceasefire and a solution so that violence could cease. I don't remember if there was a candidate like that, but I have a lot of friends who just were like, I can't vote for Kamala Harris because she supports the war against Palestine. And I was like, well, yeah, I don't want that either. But the choice isn't killing children in Palestine or not. The choice is between killing children in Palestine or killing children in Palestine plus fascism. That's the choice, right? And it sucks that that's the choice, and I think that's a product of our anti-kingdom of God political economy, mammon. But it's still the real choice.
Yeah,
it's the real choice, and it sucks that it's the choice. So I guess all that to say is, my conscience is not conflicted when I vote for a Democrat, not being a Democrat, because I believe that the harm caused by that person will be less than the harm of another person.
Mm-hmm.
Their policies, right?
Yeah.
And I think moving past like a purity ethic of I can't vote because of this wrongdoing, I think it's helpful just to acknowledge we're complicit in wrongdoing all the time. And not voting for somebody or voting for somebody isn't going to extract us from that network of harm.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a real long rant, man. Sorry about that.
But you did nail something that I've been trying to also kind of put some words to, that there are ethical principles that we should be clinging on to. But when you only apply those ethical principles to one partisan issue that then sways your vote, then you don't hold that principle. You are partisan. And then when you flip it around and the other party is in power, you let go of that principle, and then you just kind of embrace all the things that are happening. I've noticed this. Like, the cancel culture that the right was so obsessed with. They're saying, the left keeps canceling all the people who are not for this, the woke agenda or whatever the language they used. And then we got to stop the cancel culture and free speech. And then we flip it around. Now they're in power, and they put cancel culture on steroids, and they're suing news pundits and demanding that people resign. And it's like that principle that they held of cancel culture is bad, free speech good, didn't translate into where they are now. So then I wonder, I don't think that they have that principle. They don't embrace that principle. They didn't like being silenced by the other side, and now that they're in power, then they're good to use that against their political opponents. And there's no embracing of the principle itself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's clear. Like in my state of Indiana, the attorney general for the state basically put out an APB to educators and told them to turn in fellow teachers and educators employed by the state who put out posts critical of Charlie Kirk so they could be terminated.
Wow.
I mean, we see this with Jimmy Kimmel, right? So he gets suspended for speaking ill about how MAGA and Charlie, just using his free speech. So we have this searing irony that Charlie Kirk, even by what would be considered moderate or liberal commentators, is held up as this paragon of free speech, right? This defender and champion of free speech. And in his death, people who use their free speech to disagree with his homophobia, his misogyny, his racism, his lies, and I could go on about how I don't want my son to grow up to be like Charlie Kirk. People who use their free speech to disagree with Charlie Kirk are punished, right? So, to my ears, just to amplify what you're saying, Tom, that means that what Charlie Kirk is an advocate of isn't actually free speech, but free speech is an ideological weapon that is being used in a way that actually compromises free speech. It's its undoing. It's the co-opting of free speech to make it unfree.
Yeah. And I don't know enough about him to know whether or not he would approve of how it's being done now in his name, because I didn't swim in the waters of that. I didn't follow him. I didn't read any of his stuff. I'm pretty new to that world just because now it's in the news.
Yeah.
So I don't feel equipped to really talk a lot from an informed place about that, about how he would feel about how it's being done. I know that I disagree with the lack of principle in action, but I don't know where he stood on that.
Yeah, I don't know enough either. I wasn't prepared to talk about Charlie Kirk today.
It was not in my notes.
It wasn't in my mind. But I think to your point, that's what I think authoritarian supremacists do. Is they use principled positions as propaganda for power.
I definitely see that in action.
For power. Whereas who I strive to be is somebody who holds principled positions, not for propaganda purposes, but for virtue.
Yeah.
In ways that will cost me. So not ways that help me get power, but in ways that could cost me power. So, for instance, 20 years ago, when the Roman Catholic sex scandal was blowing up, I was in seminary at a conservative evangelical seminary, and the buzz around the campus at the time, Tom, was basically letting Roman Catholics have it.
I remember that. Yeah.
Letting them have it.
Same in my spheres.
But then 10, 15 years later, when it wasn't just Roman Catholics having the scandal, but it was the Southern Baptist Convention, it was the PCA, and it was, Acts 29, and just go down the list of all the organizations or denominations that were having it. Well, now those same people were unwilling to stand with survivors and decry the abuses of the institutions they were from.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And for me, that's just like a galling hypocrisy. And it's about self-preserving power.
Yeah.
And, I'm capable of hypocrisy and duplicity, just like, as much or more so than anybody. But I'm committed to, when I see that, to pick up my cross. I mean, to actually it is a discipleship moment to say, I don't have to stand with this survivor who is being gaslit and not listened to in my denomination. I can stay quiet about this, or I can, express thoughts and prayers and general abstract support to the investigation and hoping the truth will come out. Or I can amplify their cries of injustice, knowing that the institution won't be grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not going to be grateful for that.
Yeah. We're taking a quick break here mid-show to let you know of an opportunity that Choir is offering. Are you deconstructing your faith? It's tough, believe me, I know, I've done it. But what if you didn't have to do it alone? Imagine having guides like Jim Palmer, Kristen Dumais, Jennifer Knapp, Brad Jerzak, Brian Zahn, Paul Young, and more by your side to help. I know I would have loved that on my journey. Well, now you can. Head on over to choiracademy.com, link will be in the show notes, and register for their Square 2 class using the promo code LIMINAL, and you will get 10% off. This course and community are designed to help you navigate your journey with wisdom and support, all because you're a fan of the Liminal Living podcast. Ministry leaders, how do you heal from the burnout, loneliness, and the relentless weight of leadership? Kaneo Center exists for you. For 5 years, Kaneo has walked with over 500 ministry leaders through their darkest seasons, offering a rare blend of compassionate coaching, therapeutically informed practices, and Jesus-centered renewal. Kaneo is launching new 24-week cohorts now, where you'll join a small group of leaders for weekly video coaching, guided curriculum, and reflections to rebuild your resilience. The cohort all ends with a retreat in Puerto Rico. As a Kaneo coach myself, I've seen how this space transforms lives. And for Liminal Living listeners, mention Liminal in your application at thecaneocenter.com/cohort to claim $100 off your cohort experience. You've poured into others, let Kaneo pour into you. If you're in a dark night or deconstruction, you know how vital it is to ground yourself in intentional practice. That's why I'm thrilled to partner with the Monk Manual, a journaling system inspired by monastic wisdom and backed by science. The Monk Manual is a daily journal companion for reflection, purpose, and aligning your actions with your deepest values. Whether you're rebuilding after deconstruction or seeking clarity in transition, this tool turns liminality into grounded growth. And now, Liminal Living listeners can save 10% on their Monk Manual using the code LIMINAL over at monkmanual.com/liminal. And remember, the wisdom of liminal spaces lies in how we journey through them. So do it with intention. And now back to our show. That institutional power, I mean, Christians have had the institutional authority for a long time. I could probably make an argument since 387 when the Roman government co-opted it as the official religion of the empire, and then just kind of globalized that. They took all of the different the sects of Christianity and said we need to uniform this and make it one thing, and we have to all know who we're worshiping, how we do it, when we do it, and they made uniform, all the different sects and of Christianity at that moment. And it seems as though that it was turning Christianity into kind of a tool of the empire, just for the sake of getting it more out there, spreading the gospel, if you will. Yeah. And that seems to be the playbook ever since. There's probably little parts of history here and there where it wasn't, but we've had the authority for a long time, and I think that has started to crumble. The authority that the church can claim of, you're not in the club, you're going to hell, you better get right, and we have the means to do so come to our building and give money.
Yeah. Yeah.
That seems to be crumbling as the world changes, especially the last 100 years, as science and cosmology and biology and neurology, physiology, psychology, like the way that the human brain and the human imagination is expanding is outpacing our imagination around God. And the institution's response is always to push back and to fight and try to go backwards. And I'm wondering, like, a lot of our God assumptions today are steeped in this, I guess, that fundamentalist pushback to society. You can probably stem it back to the 1890s and 1920s, where we just resist this change, this understanding, evolution and cosmology and everything. And I'm wondering what you see in your spheres as a pastor of some of those God assumptions, how we imagine God, that are kind of crumbling. What are the ones that are most troubling for you to see that people want to reinforce and rebuild when we should let it crumble and let a new imagination take hold? That was a really long question, but
yeah. So Tom, the question then is, so for instance, MAGA is the predominant United States sort of reactionary white Christian movement against change.
That is the most modern expression of it that I can see, I guess.
Yeah. And that involves a coalition, a broad coalition of all kinds of fairly diverse, like ethnically diverse, even faith tradition diverse, but it involves some Christian nationalism, right? So that, which is sort of a Christian supremacy, which is a claim that Christianity should assert dominance and control over culture as a way of expressing Christian faith. Yeah?
Yeah, I see that in operation a lot.
Yeah. And I think there's there's so much to say about this, but I do think it's an indication that our formation has been compromised or comprised of imperial empire instincts, impulses, common sense habits that we are susceptible to and compromised by violent authoritarian logics.
Yeah.
And so we consider leading like the Gentiles do to be faithful. And there's very little ability or desire to repent of that.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I think we should let die.
Yeah.
I think this isn't popular. We may lose listeners. But I do think, even though our country is founded on the separation of church and state, we were founded as a predominantly or dominantly white Christian supremacist country. And that we were able to enforce that for a long time because of slavery, laws, etc. But slavery gets overturned, and then there's convict leasing and Jim Crow and lynchings and et cetera. But then the 1960s creates a new possibility of legal equality. And you can trace the beginnings of MAGA to the reaction against white male supremacy being threatened by civil and gender rights in the 1960s. And so when you're a supremacist, other people getting access to and equality in the things you have access to, it feels like you're being oppressed. Because part of the bargain of a imperial or supremacist way of living is, I have privileges other people don't. That's the promise. That's the gift of supremacy, is that you are over or better than or have more say or have access to or have privileges that other people don't.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And that's under threat. And now we're seeing the more full backlash of that being threatened.
Yeah, because there is an anger at the root of that reaction. There's like a rage that I see as soon as you like mention anything about privilege or anything. Like there is like a rage, knee-jerk reaction that happens. That is surprising, very surprising. How reactionary. I've encountered it a few times where you say, well, we're not a Christian nation, we were founded on slavery, and then the reaction, good Lord, like just look out, because the emotional vomiting that takes place can be intense. But you layer on top of that reality the fact that most people don't feel that privilege, because what is it, 60% of Americans are now living below the poverty line, or paycheck to paycheck, or however you want to put it. And they're then blaming their economic disparity on people of color, immigrants, and then they latch on to the party that is actually doing the most economic harm as their savior, because they promise to deliver them from these people of color that's taking their jobs, or
right. Well, this is I don't know if you've heard me say this, and we may have talked about this before, Tom, but MAGA is more than vibes, but it's not less than vibes.
Say more.
And what I mean by vibes is MAGA understands and speaks to, i.e., tells partial truth about real social and economic anxieties people are feeling.
Yeah.
No doubt older white people or rural white people feel economic squeezes and social cultural squeezes to their life. There's more pluralism, there's more diversity, there's language they don't understand. You know, a friend's dad got scammed. One of my friend's dad got scammed by somebody purporting to be a tax official for the U.S. government, and he ended up transferring like $30,000 of his savings to some scammer. And I just share that story to say not that everybody's getting scammed, but we live in a world where, you know, like our parents, Tom, when they were our age, felt like they knew how things worked. They looked around and saw everything, their preferences everywhere. And they felt like this was their country. They felt home. Mm-hmm. And now we live in a much more diverse country. You know, there's racial and gender and religious minorities in people's communities that make white bodies feel uncomfortable.
Yep.
And MAGA resonates with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Whereas, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden will give kind of lip service to some of that, but then when they're talking about their solutions, they say things like, the economy has never been better.
Mm-hmm.
Look at how great the economy is. And in all the ways that, people measure economic statistics, they're right? Unemployment's down, and the stock market's up, and all the interest rates are low. Like, all these things are typically, they're not lying, they typically are good, but those markers don't help the economic and social anxieties of, Tom Rundell, farmer in Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't help them. And so MAGA actually attunes to millions of people who are feeling sidelined and exploited.
Yeah.
Excluded. Who are feeling they're feeling marginalized. Now, whether or not they really are is another conversation, but they're feeling that, and MAGA validates that feeling and then weaponizes that feeling against people more vulnerable than them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so even though MAGA vibes with the vibes of social and economic anxieties.
Yeah.
But then weaponizes those vibes against the most vulnerable people, immigrants, trans people, and others.
Yeah.
Right? Black people.
Yeah.
And so I forget why I started sharing that, Tom. Other than just, I forget why I started sharing that. I think outliers in the Democratic scene, like Mom Donnie right now in New York City, who's running for mayor, or Bernie Sanders. The difference between them and like a Joe Biden is that they actually are also resonating with vibes. So they also get the vibes right. Meaning, Bernie Sanders will say things like, well, of course you can't afford a house, right? Because, the living wage has remained stagnant while CEO salaries have skyrocketed, right? So the wage compared to, your wage compared to the cost of living has stayed stagnant while, CEOs' salaries have gone up, 300% or whatever. And that actually speaks to what people are feeling, but they're not popular. They're not able to galvanize an electorate because whether or not their policies are correct. I'm not even advocating for their policies. I'm saying they get the vibes right too, but with a few exceptions, they don't scapegoat vulnerable people to galvanize fear and anger to electrify a voting bloc.
Yes.
The way MAGA does.
Yeah.
And I think that's ethically superior. Bernie Sanders will say this group of people, these billionaires, are bilking, they're making healthcare unaffordable. And you shouldn't have to pay thousands of dollars for insulin a month, right? The billionaires have enough. But he isn't calling them cockroaches and animals. He isn't saying the solution is to hire some federal deputies to put on masks and kidnap them off the street and send them to some floating concentration camp in the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
He's just saying we should pass legislation. We should be a democratic society, and maybe instead of $600 million of profit, they could get by with $200 million, and insulin could be affordable. Yeah. So, just circling back, then, I'm not advocating for Bernie Sanders. What I'm saying is the way his solutions to the problems are less morally repugnant than MAGA's solutions to the problems.
Yeah, I will definitely agree with that. For sure. I mean, we're talking about, the political system, but the political system is soaked in the economic system that we all inhabit, which would be some form of capitalism, which that seems to be something that morphs and changes as well. How do you think capitalism shapes our understanding of God? If we look backwards, we can look at how, people in Thomas Aquinas' day, they had a feudal system, and they, said, well, the lords in the tower provide us bread, therefore God must be like this economic system we inhabit. The Lord is in the tower, has most of the stuff, and that's fine. Sometimes he comes out to bless us, but most of the time we just have to try and, come along our way and figure things out. Mm-hmm. So we have this medieval understanding of God as this Lord in the tower, which I think we still hold to a little bit. You hear people talk about the man in the sky and all that kind of stuff. But how do you think our system of economics, of capitalism, has shaped either our understanding of God or the way we practice our Christian faith collectively.
Oh, man. Yeah. This is the book that I want to write, Tom.
I think you should.
But it feels. I mean, I'm a pastor. I've got the pastor degree that you get as a master's, but I'm just not trained as an economist. I'm not trained as a. It feels like it's above my pay grade. But let's see how to answer this question. So Eugene McCarhar wrote a book called The Enchantments of Mammon.
Yes, and I learned about that book from you.
Yes, I don't recommend reading it. It's
a big book.
It's a big book. It's a slog. You can find interviews with him online where he discusses it. Just do that.
Okay.
Yeah. That'll save you from spending $28 on a book that you won't read and you'll always feel guilty about it. Just listen to the but the first page of the book, he says that capitalism is the religion of modernity.
Mm-hmm.
And what he means by that is our political economy, i.e., and there's capitalisms, which, footnote here, I could speak 30 minutes rather sloppily about the various iterations of capitalism, not only in our country, but also around the world. But when I'm using that phrase or that word today, I'm referring to our current capitalistic state, which is there's a lot of adjectives to describe it: free market, neoliberal, finance-driven capitalism. The way that the quote market is revered or seen inside of that free market, neoliberal, finance-driven capitalism, the market becomes God. The market is omniscient. It's omnipotent. You need to get out of its way.
Invisible hand of the market.
It will apportion according to everyone's merit what they need / deserve if you just let it do its thing. And what governs the market is self-interest. So if you get out of the way of individuals, you, meaning the government, if the government gets out of the way of individuals doing what's best for themselves, magically, blessedly, Tom, everyone will be taken care of. Now, anyone with like a 6th grade Sunday school education about what Christianity's about can already hear the tensions that system has with the kingdom of God.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the kingdom of God doesn't run on self-interest. In fact, there's explicit commands to not look after your own interests only, but also the interests of others. Like there's explicit commands that indicate self-interest could be selfishness. It could be covetousness, right? It could be envy. It could be lust. All those things can be captured by self-interest. Yeah. And then obviously you have the problem with merit. Like those of us who are Christian believe that we have inherited an eternal life that is unmerited. That the logic of the kingdom of God, the economy of the kingdom of God, isn't one based on merit. In fact, it's based upon like grace, unmerited favor. I mean, this is like Protestant Reformation theology here.
Yeah, like 101 stuff.
101 stuff. Yeah. And so if we're living in a real world material political economic system and I could go into other ideas that run neoliberal, finance-driven, free market capitalism that are in tension with the kingdom of God. But let's just talk about meriting and self-interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how the market functions as an omniscient being. we live in that system. We live and move and breathe and have our being in that system, Tom. We don't have to go to capitalism camp as a 6-year-old and hear a pitch to accept capitalism into our hearts and then raise our hands and become a capitalist. No, we are just formed with these logics and instincts. They just are in our bodies. They function precognitively. It's our operating system, to use a metaphor, right?
Yeah.
And so we actually have to intentionally excavate these assumptions, these beliefs, these deep-held ways of being in the world. We have to excavate them intentionally, or else they just run the show. They just run the show.
Yeah.
You know?
And then we equate that whole description. We just kind of put Jesus as the mascot of this form, and it is Christianity, the national religion of the
say more about that.
people.
How does Jesus become the mascot?
I have conversations with conservative friends or family, and it's like they will not embrace like college forgiveness. Let's forgive student debts. And they get violently, verbally opposed to the idea because their religion is based on merit. But then you jump into their ideas about theology, and it's all about grace and mercy.
Yes.
And there's a separation between their lived religion of capitalism and their religion in their head, but they can't admit that without calling into question the very core value system that drives their life. And that's a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
And so they just baptize it and call it the Christian faith. And then Jesus is the mascot, but we actually don't listen to what he said or do what he does or embrace what he embraced. We turn to, Old Testament monarchical traditions that underpin all of the presidential powers and say, well, he is the chosen one, or he is the... so that's what I see.
Yes.
Just to piggyback on what you're talking about there. That's something that I've experienced. It is their religion. Capitalism is the religion cloaked in just a religious garb, and they can't tell the difference, because if they do, they have to dismantle their whole world, and they're not willing to do that.
Yes.
All right, that is the end of part 1. We had a little bit of an abrupt ending, but we continue on next week into kind of more practical what this looks like and how to work this out kind of stuff. So make sure to tune in next week for part 2 of my conversation with Matt Tebbe, where we reimagine God in light of economic stuff going on. So I'll see you next week. Peace out.